What's going on, everyone? Jeremy Ritz here, the Sunday Setup, getting you ready for a brand new week in the markets starting December 8th. And it is going to be a jam-packed one because we have the Fed rate decision coming on Wednesday. We're going to get the dot plot projections, and Jerome Powell speaks at 2:30, which I'll be live streaming. Join me for that. But let's get into the charts, talk about what we have to look forward to this week so that you are prepared to make some money. Let's go. All right, so let's begin by taking a look at the data that we are getting this week. Starting on Tuesday, December 9th, we could see that we are going to get the JOLTS data here at 10 a.m. And the good thing with the government shutdown being over now is we're starting to get regular data. So this is going to give us some insight into the health of the labor market. And this is going to be rolling in here at 10 a.m. So just be mindful of that. And then Wednesday is the big day because it's the Fed rate decision that comes at 2 p.m. We get the dot plot. You can see here with the economic projections. And then Papa P speaks at 2:30, which is going to inject significant volatility into the markets. And then coming over to Thursday, we get PPI month over month, year over year inflation data, which is going to be important. So you could see that this week is jam-packed with important data. And then what typically happens after the rate decision and the Powell presser is we get Fed speakers. So on Friday, you have Paulson, Hammock, and Goolsbee who will be talking. And so traders and investors will be looking for clues whether or not the Fed is going to be dovish, hawkish. But also keep in mind, too, that Trump is going to name the successor to Powell sometime in January, or at least that's what he said, because Powell's term is up in May. So this regime is pretty much over, and he's more than likely going to select a super dove who wants to cut rates. So that gets us prepared for the data. In terms of earnings this week, the big ones that I'm watching, Oracle on Wednesday. They've been beaten up since that big move they had on the last earnings report. And then on Thursday, we're going to get Broadcom, ticker symbol AVGO, in addition to Costco, which has been pummeled here as of late. So we can see if that will get a bit of a rise. But let's go ahead and just jump into the charts. And let's go through the broader markets first. You can see here on the SPX on Friday, we closed with this candle that really tried to push back up into this candle from October. When we were near all-time highs, this was around October 29th, and you could see that selling pressure did come in. The SPX was up about 38 points on Friday, but you could see the sellers step in. Right now, we have the point of control right below us there at 68.4582, a strong volume node. We are above all the moving averages, and really, we've just been kind of range bound. If we were to draw a box here to look at what we've been doing, from those all-time highs, we've really just been trading inside of this range from 65.29 up to 69.18. And that tells me that pressure is building for a potential upside move or a breakdown lower. But I don't see that breakdown coming until we get into 2026. The year-end rally still looks like it's on the table. We did see an uptick in bullish volume here. RSI has shown momentum, as is the MACD. And we got that pullback in November, which was the first of its kind since April. So the SPX looks decent. The Qs, notice that it has this gap to fill up here to 630.06, which it got close to doing here on Friday. But again, just like we saw on the SPX, you had sellers come in and drop this down. It is above this volume node here on the VRVP. If it were to shoot through that, you could see it could fall down pretty quickly here to the 50. And we had decent volume come in. And what this may suggest to me is the big tech mega cap stocks could lead this year-end rally. And the reason I say that is because if you come over here to the Dow Jones Industrial, the DIA, you can see that we do have a head and shoulders pattern forming. And we have these upper wicks here at those resistance areas on the left shoulder, on the head, and on the right shoulder. So let's see if we see rotation out of the Dow Jones and into big tech, and if that is who leads the rally. And notice too, the volume is declining here. So this is one to pay attention to. And then IWM, remember, small caps typically bang higher in December in the year-end rally. It retested the all-time high now twice. and was not able to break above that. So this looks to me like maybe it wants to come down a little more, maybe retest the 10 and then continue higher. But we did see an uptick in bearish volume here on Friday. So again, that's why I'm thinking that potentially the Qs could lead the charge here into the end of the year. Taking a look at Bitcoin, this one, I don't know what to say. We did have what potentially looked like a bottoming candle here on this hammer after the massive drop. We pushed higher. It looked like the recovery was in place. And then we started this week with a big sell-off on Bitcoin, and we got back down to 83,000. But then the next day, we pushed back up, got into the 92,000 area. It looked like we were going to head up to the 50, but then we got rejected back down. And what we want to watch for here structure-wise is that Bitcoin is able to continue to make higher lows. If we are to break down and create a lower low, we have to watch the bottom of this candle, this lower wick at 83,881. And if it takes that out, you have to have this wick here on that hammer at 80,504 hold, or come down to 77 or 75,000. And if markets are truly going to be risk on, we need to see Bitcoin move. It's an indicator of risk on sentiment. And so Bitcoin has to participate. Now, jumping over to TLT, the 20-year treasury bond, the head and shoulders is playing out. So people are selling bonds, which in turn drives up the 10-year yield, which mortgage brokers don't like because that jacks up the mortgage rate. So let's see if this one wants to fall. And then the US dollar, after it broke above the 200, collapsed. Now it's below the 50. You have the 100 here, waiting as the next support. Remember, a weaker US dollar is good for equities, so we want to see more weakness come in here. And then taking a look at gold, we have a higher high, lower high double top, which I really do like. So let's see if we can get some weakness. We have some selling, some upper wicks coming into play here. If this one wants to drop, potentially we could see rotation out of gold into Bitcoin as a store of value. And then finally, the VIX continues to burn down, closing at 1540 on Friday. Let's see if it can come down to these lows that it made in August at 1411. And if it does, I will be grabbing some VIX calls for the spring cheap as a hedge, because it's not going to stay down forever. And if we get a spike, you can make decent money on a cheap play there. So that's what I'll be watching. So just in summary here, looking at the broader markets, the SPY, the SPX, the Qs look like they have room. The Dow Jones head and shoulders pattern, let's see if we see rotation out of that into big tech. And then small cap showing a little bit of weakness after retesting that all-time high. Let's see if it can show some strength, or if it wants to come down, consolidate a bit before moving higher. Now, let's go and take a look at some individual tickers, starting with Netflix. And Netflix acquired Warner Brothers on Friday, so that's why you saw a little bit of a drop. The acquiring company, because they're having to spend cash, I think it was 80-some billion. Imagine having that on hand. So they acquired Warner Brothers, and we saw some movement higher, but it could not hold on to those gains. And really, Netflix has been hanging out down here below the 200 for quite some time. But look at this right here. This is what is known as a death cross on the daily. Whenever the 50-day simple moving average crosses down below the 200. And so we want to keep our eyes on this to see if it can come lower. Now, I have this line drawn on my chart here because this was the high that it made in December before a little bit of a drop and a gap up. And this would be an area where I would consider going long. So I'm watching to see if we can get down to that 94 mark, but keep an eye on this with that death cross. We have Microsoft here. This double top continues to play out. The 50s crossing down through the 100. The last time that happened here was in February, and you can see the bigger drop that followed. It did find support off of the 200 and bounce, but it's still below that 10-day exponential moving average. It needs to reclaim that if it's going to push higher. You can clearly see all the resistance that is above it. So I'm not looking to do anything here with Microsoft. Let's see if it continues to come back down, maybe retest that 200 again. But for now, I'm just watching it. Amazon, after that massive spike off of earnings, gave it all back, came down, retested the 200, popped back above it, rejected selling, now back down to the 50 and the 100. And it's being compressed between that 10 and the 50 and the 100. So it's going to squeeze this one way or another. And right now it looks like it probably will come a bit lower. You have thin volume down here to 223.10. Maybe it needs to do that retest the point of control before coming back up. But this is one I'm interested in seeing. I do think that there is an opportunity here, but I want to see a little bit more strength and see it reclaim that 10-day exponential moving average. Apple, man, this thing just continues to push, got up to 288.85, retested back down to the 10 here. I still have that $300 price target on Apple here relatively soon, but I'm not going to chase it because the risk to reward just isn't there for me yet. And then we have Broadcom reporting earnings here on Thursday. You could see the last time that they reported, nice gap up, and really we've just been chopping sideways in this price range, but it did hit $403. You saw price targets lifted on this one up to $450. So this one could have some nice room up. And if you go back to last December, this thing had a major gapper. So can we get something similar to this? I'll be watching. There could be an opportunity for a out of the money call option play, very cheap. And then we come to Google. It continues to be strong. We're bull flagging right now. A tiny bit overbought here on the RSI. I'm not touching it because the risk to reward to me isn't there, and this thing could break down. So I'll just sit this one out and wait and see what it does. But congrats to all the Google holders who have been enjoying this run up. Now, this is a chart that is very interesting to me. This is Meta after getting pummeled off of its last earnings report. It's in a very interesting spot. We have an inside candle here right now, a bullish harami, which typically indicates more upside. And we're right between where we closed on that 200 and that 50. But look here, there is thin volume on the VRVP up to 703. And above that, we can see this 100-day simple moving average at 711.98. And then we also have this gap to fill up here to 742.58. So keep an eye on Meta if we see rotation out of some of those other big boys into this one, because it could present some nice moves. There was some call activity that flowed into this one on Friday. So definitely going to be keeping my eye on that. And then NVIDIA is back down in the box. And actually, when I was looking at the SPY looks very similar to NVIDIA in terms of its structure. And December is typically not a kind month to NVIDIA, so I expect it to just chop around in this box, come lower. If it does that, I'll look for potential play heading into the new year because chips have in the past rebounded in January. But as of right now, I'm not looking for anything long on that. Roblox, one that you guys know that I'm following. I have 2028 leaps on this one. Finally got above its 10-day exponential moving average. But we do have this 200 here above it as resistance, which is going to be hard for it to break. Looking to see if it could create some type of inverted head and shoulders before running. But even if it does clear that 200, you still have the 50 up here at 114.82. You have the 100 at 120.91, and you have the point of control at 140.03. This one has lots and lots of work to do. You could finally see the momentum curling up here on the RSI. MACD is flipping, but we need to see more bullish volume than this because that's pretty weak. And we still have two gaps to fill to the downside at 83.04 and 77.06. And then let's take a look at the trade desk. You guys know that I like to follow this one. This one has almost replaced Mr. Roku for me back in the day. But again, just look at how far this thing has fallen from its all-time highs, 141, back down at support from 2020 COVID lows. And it is building out some support here, but these are really small candles. You are seeing some buying come in here, but this has to hold. We need to see more volume, and we're finally seeing the RSI tick up. We finally saw the MACD tick up, and it closed above that 10 for the first time since October. So it does have room here, but we're going to watch price levels of 42.88 as a rejection point. If that would happen, it would probably come back down or test 40.54. But then above that, it can move up to the 50 at 46.84. And then if it could clear that area, you can get into the 50s and potentially up to the 100 here at 54.21. But if you are trading the trade desk on a swing trade, you are going to need to be patient because this one is going to take 6 to 12 to 18 months in order for it to really flesh out. but you got to be patient for it. And I'm watching for more downside moves as well. 35, I'll add to a long-term position that I have. And on the way down, I'll scale in slowly, but finally seeing a little bit of light, but I don't like that upper wick there. And then taking a look at old Tesla here, double bottom off of the 100, above all of its moving averages, 10 crossing up through the 50, above all the volume nodes on the VRVP, and back up into these areas where it has been rejected before. December is typically a strong month for Tesla, but can it hit that 500 mark? And remember, if Tesla is running, typically NVIDIA won't run with it. So any weakness in NVIDIA is a good thing for Tesla, but there could be some opportunities to the upside here. MSTR, I talked last weekend about how massively beat down this one was, and we did get a little push this week, but whenever Bitcoin flashed weakness again, it dropped. But it is sitting on the point of control on the VRVP on the daily, this large volume node, but look how thin the volume is if it can get above 190.81. You have a target up here to the 50 at 256.32. You have the 100 at 309. So the reward here is high. It's just this chart's got to show a little bit more strength. If it can close above that 10 and above 190, it could be an opportunity to go long. I will be watching it this week. ROKU back down to the box and then out of the box. And what I keep saying, if ROKU can close above the 108, it's going to go to 140. So I'm going to be watching that for some day trades this week. But this is an area where it typically comes down and retests for liquidity and then pushes higher. So eyes are on ROKU this week. Coinbase is another one that's going to need Bitcoin to participate in order for it to move. But you can see the last few times it's been in this price area, it's pushed higher. This was January of this year, and then again in June. And we are right back down here now. Can this get a little bit of a push if it can get above the 200? You would look at this 50 here as a potential opportunity. That's at 315. You have the point of control here at 306.72. So keeping an eye on that one as well. And SMCI. This one is starting to show a little bit of a rebound above the 10. Decent little uptick in volume. RSI showing some momentum. MACD is flipping. Thin volume up to 38.96. And if you could push through these volume nodes up to the point of control, 44.68. And then you have that 200 SMA at 43.23. So there could be some good day trade opportunities here on SMCI. And then UNH, the bearish flow on this one was pretty significant on Friday. And it is going to pay its dividend on Monday. But look at this. After the dividend is paid, you can see that there's typically a drop and then a little spike. Right here, dividend paid. Right here, drop, then a little bit of a spike. We are paying the dividend here on Monday. So let's see if this thing wants to drop down to the 100 and then spike from there. And this is just recent history, but that's one that I'll be keeping an eye on. And then ULTA, look at this gapper on earnings. This is strong. You did see a little bit of profit taking that came in here. More than likely what will happen this week is it's just going to trade inside the range of this candle before deciding what type of move that it wants to make. Will it come back down and fill the gap? Who knows? But wow, what a great gap up on ULTA. And then you have Robinhood continuing to make lower highs. It tried to rebound a bit on Friday after a nice move the previous 2 days. Let's see if the thing wants to come down and retest the 10 before moving higher, but those lower highs are a bit concerning. CRCL, I like this chart too. We are above the 10. This thing was back down to its IPO price, but you could see thin volume all the way up here to 111.95. So I will be watching this one for day trades this week. In SOUN, I know this is a favorite of the audience. I'm going to have a full analysis video of this ticker this week, but nice little double bottom. We have the start of a trend line here. You have room up to the 100 at 14.55 and then a target of 15.58 if this one wants to get moving. But go back to last year, December, and you could see what happened on this one. It was down around, let's see here, $8.93. And then look at this move that it made, and it got to a high of almost $25. So SoundHound can move fast and furious. If we get a rally in small caps, keep an eye on that one. That one could be very interesting. And let's just go through a few more here before we wrap up for the week. And I got to take a look at Carvana for my man, Jason. And he had a awesome swing trade on this one. So congrats to Jason. But the reason why I want to share this chart is take a look at what happened post-market on Carvana. Look at this move. It had a, let's measure this out, a $50 plus move. Why? Because it was added to the S&P 500. That squeezed a lot of bears, and I'm interested to see how this one opens up on Monday, if it's going to squeeze higher, if it's going to fade lower. But man, what an opportunity. Somebody was in that, someone caught this. And that brings me to this thing that I always say when working with students is one candle can change your life. So imagine somebody being in here, and let's say that they had 1,000 shares, 1,000 shares, $50 move, $50,000, right? And that did happen to somebody. Somebody out there probably had more than 1,000 shares, but it's just the power of the markets, exposure to the markets. Eventually, the probabilities and math will work out in your favor. So congrats to any Carvana holders out there that nailed this one last week. And that is going to do it for the Sunday setup. I appreciate you guys being here with me this Sunday. And tell me down below in the comments, what trade are you watching this weekend for next week? I would love to hear it. I will comment on your responses. I comment on every response on the video, so please make that happen. A lot of new content coming this week, and I got to drive home the New Year Wealth Accelerator class, January 5th, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm going to be teaching the fundamentals, basics, essentials of investing and swing trading. I want you to be there with me. Click the registration link below in the description, and let's come together in 2026. And that is going to do it for the Sunday setup. I appreciate you guys so much. Thanks for your support of the channel. In the meantime, in between time, make it a great day, honor the moment, and most importantly, be grateful.